Jinho Park pressed his face against the small window of the cargo transport. Space looked peaceful from here. Stars twinkled like tiny diamonds on black cloth. He had made this trip 12 times before, always the same route from Earth to Kepler Station. His job was simple: count supplies, check numbers, make sure everything arrived where it needed to go. The transport ship was old and noisy. It carried 42 passengers, mostly workers and traders heading to the outer colonies. Jinho sat in seat 15C, reading reports on his tablet about missing shipments and delayed deliveries. Numbers and patterns, that was his world. He was good at seeing when things did not match up. A loud bang echoed through the ship. Then another. The lights flickered. "What was that?" asked the woman sitting next to him. Her name tag said Soo Kim and she worked for a mining company. Before Jinho could answer, the captain's voice crackled over the speakers. "All passengers, we are experiencing some technical difficulties. Please remain calm and stay in your seats." But Jinho could see through his window that this was not technical difficulties. Strange ships with sharp, angular designs were attacking the convoy. Red laser beams cut through space like deadly ripples. One of the escort ships exploded in a bright flash of orange and white. "Everyone to the emergency pods," the captain shouted, his voice now full of panic. "We are under attack. This is not a drill." Passengers screamed and ran toward the back of the ship where the escape pods waited. Jinho grabbed his tablet and followed the crowd. His heart pounded in his chest. He had read about pirate attacks in the news, but he never thought it would happen to him. The ship shook violently. Emergency lights flashed red. Through the chaos, Jinho heard someone say the attackers were not pirates. These ships were completely unknown. No one had seen designs like these before. Just as Jinho reached the pod bay, everything changed. A massive warship appeared beside them. It was 3 times bigger than their transport, with smooth gray metal and blue lights running along its sides. The words "Stellar Harmony" were written in multiple languages on its hull. "Galactic Defense Coalition vessel requesting permission to take survivors aboard," came a new voice over the radio. This voice was calm and strong. "Prepare for emergency transfer." The rescue happened quickly. Coalition soldiers in powered armor helped passengers move from the damaged transport to the military ship. Jinho found himself walking through corridors that were completely different from anything he had ever seen. The walls were covered with symbols from dozens of alien languages. Crew members included tall, thin beings with 4 arms, short creatures with blue skin, and others that looked like walking trees. Most wore the same gray and blue uniforms, but their faces and bodies were nothing like humans. A soldier with 4 arms and crystal-like eyes approached Jinho and the other survivors. He was clearly the one in charge. His uniform had more decorations than the others. "I am Commander Vextar of the Stellar Harmony," he said through a small device that translated his words into perfect English. "You are safe now. We will escort you to the nearest coalition base." "What were those ships that attacked us?" asked Soo Kim. The commander's crystal eyes darkened. "Unknown hostiles. This is the 5th attack this week. They appear suddenly, strike fast, and disappear before we can respond properly." Jinho listened carefully. 5 attacks in 1 week meant a pattern. Patterns were something he understood. A young woman in a coalition uniform approached them. She looked human with short black hair and tired eyes. "I'm Lieutenant Yuna Choi," she said. "I'll show you to the guest quarters where you'll stay until we reach safety." As they walked through the ship, Jinho noticed things that bothered him. Supplies were stored in the wrong places. Equipment sat unused while crew members struggled with tasks that could be easier. The military precision looked impressive, but the basic organization was terrible. "How long have you been on this ship?" Jinho asked Lieutenant Choi. 2 years, she replied. "I'm one of only 3 humans in the entire fleet. Most species have been doing space military service for hundreds of years. We're still learning their ways." They passed the storage room where several alien crew members were arguing. Jinho could see the problem immediately. Medical supplies were blocked behind heavy ammunition crates. If someone got hurt, it would take 20 minutes to reach basic first aid equipment. "Does this happen often?" he asked, pointing to the confused scene. Yuna sighed. "Every day. Each species has their own way of organizing things. The Centaurians like everything in straight lines. The Vokari prefer circular patterns. The Zephyrians want everything sorted by weight. When you put them all together..." She shrugged. The guest quarters were small but clean. Jinho sat on the narrow bed and opened his tablet. Even though he was supposed to rest, his mind was working. The attack patterns, the ship's organization problems, the way different species thought about the same tasks, it all connected somehow. Through his room's small window, he could see other coalition ships in the fleet. Some looked new and powerful. Others seemed old and patched together. They moved in perfect formation, but Jinho wondered if perfect formation was always the best choice. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Lieutenant Choi stood in the hallway with a food tray. "I thought you might be hungry," she said. "The food processors can make Earth-style meals." "Thank you." Jinho accepted the tray, then asked, "Can I ask you something? How do the different species usually handle logistics?" Yuna looked surprised. "That's an odd question. Why do you want to know?" "I manage supply chains for a living. I notice when things don't flow efficiently. And this ship." He gestured around them. "It's like trying to run a warehouse where every worker speaks a different language and follows different rules." "You're not wrong," Yuna admitted. "But it's been this way for decades. The coalition works because everyone follows strict protocols. Change is very difficult when you have over 40 member species." After she left, Jinho lay on his bed thinking. The unknown attackers had found a way to beat traditional military thinking. Maybe that was because traditional military thinking had weaknesses that only an outsider could see. His tablet beeped with an incoming message. The transport company wanted to know his status. Jinho started to write a simple reply, then stopped. Instead, he began writing down everything he had observed about the ship's operations, the attack patterns, and the crew dynamics. He did not know it yet, but those notes would soon change everything. The alarm screamed through the ship at exactly 0347 hours. Jinho woke up instantly, his heart racing. Red lights flashed in his small room as the voice of Commander Vextar echoed through the speakers. "All crew to battle stations. We have incoming hostiles. Repeat, incoming hostiles detected." Jinho quickly put on his clothes and stepped into the hallway. Other survivors from his transport were looking around nervously. Lieutenant Yuna Choi appeared, still putting on her jacket. "Everyone stay in your rooms," she ordered. "This is a military operation." But Jinho could not just sit and wait. He had spent the last 18 hours thinking about the attack patterns, and something was bothering him. He needed to see what was happening. He followed the corridors toward the observation deck, staying out of the way of running crew members. The ship's layout was starting to make sense to him. After years of walking through warehouses and supply centers, he had learned to read building designs quickly. The observation deck had a large window that showed the space around them. Jinho pressed against the glass and watched 3 more cargo convoys under attack. The enemy ships moved with the same precise coordination as before. They hit fast and disappeared before the coalition forces could respond. Fascinating creatures, aren't they? Jinho turned to see a tall, thin alien with silver skin and large eyes. The name tag on his uniform read, Science Officer Colvan. "They're not creatures," Jinho said. "They're following a plan." "Obviously. All military forces follow plans." "No, I mean a specific plan. Look at the timing." Jinho pointed at the tactical display on the wall. It showed the locations and times of all the attacks. "See how they always hit the same type of targets? Cargo ships carrying supplies to outer colonies. And they always attack exactly." He counted in his head. 47 minutes after the ships send their delivery confirmation signals. Colvan's large eyes grew wider. "That is, very specific." "It's not random raiding," Jinho continued, excitement building in his voice. "They're tracking our supply network. Every time a cargo ship tells the base station, we delivered the supplies safely, these attackers know exactly where to find the next shipment." More crew members had gathered around them. Jinho could hear them talking in different languages, but their translation devices made everything understandable. "The human might be onto something," said a blue-skinned officer. "Civilians should not interfere with military analysis," replied a creature that looked like a walking tree. Lieutenant Yuna pushed through the crowd. "What's going on here?" "This man claims he has discovered the enemy's attack pattern," Science Officer Colvan explained. Yuna looked at Jinho with surprise. "You've been here less than 2 days. Sometimes it takes fresh eyes to see what's right in front of you," Jinho said. He pulled out his tablet, which now showed a chart he had been working on. "Look at this data. Every single attack happens within 5 minutes of exactly 47 minutes after a delivery confirmation. They're not just attacking random ships. They're using our own communication system to track targets." The argument was interrupted by Commander Vextar's voice over the speakers. "Lieutenant Choi, report to the bridge immediately. Bring the civilian who was asking about logistics yesterday." Yuna stared at Jinho. "How does he know about that?" "Word travels fast on a ship," Jinho replied. The bridge was larger than Jinho had expected. Dozens of crew members from different species worked at control stations. Holographic displays showed star maps, ship positions and tactical information. Commander Vextar stood in the center, his 4 arms working different controls at once. "You are the supply chain manager?" he asked Jinho without looking up. "Yes, sir." "Explain your theory about the attack patterns." Jinho stepped forward, trying not to be nervous. Around him, alien officers with decades of military experience watched and listened. He felt very small and very human. "The attackers are not picking random targets," he began. "They're listening to our delivery confirmations. When a cargo ship reaches its destination, it sends a signal back to command saying, 'Mission completed.' The enemy intercepts these signals and uses them to find other ships in the same supply chain." Commander Vextar finally looked at him. "That would require advanced signal intelligence capabilities." "Maybe. Or maybe they just understand how supply chains work better than we think they do." A young alien officer at a nearby station suddenly spoke up. "Commander, we just received word of another attack. Cargo Convoy 7 Alpha was hit 46 minutes after confirming delivery to Kepler Station." The bridge became very quiet. Jinho felt everyone staring at him. 46 minutes, Vextar repeated slowly. "You predicted 47. "Communication delays," Jinho explained. "The signal takes time to travel through space. If you account for distance, it's probably exactly 47 minutes from when the message was sent." The young officer checked his calculations. Confirmed. Exactly 47 minutes accounting for signal delay. Commander Vextar walked closer to Jinho. His crystal eyes reflected the light from the tactical displays. "Human, if you are correct, then our standard communication protocols are being used against us." "Yes, sir. But if I'm right, I can also predict where they'll strike next." "Explain." Jinho pointed to the star map. "Convoy 12 Beta delivered supplies to the mining station at Proxima 7 2 hours ago. If the pattern holds, the attackers will hit the next convoy in that supply chain in—" He looked at his tablet. 18 minutes. "Impossible," said an officer with 6 arms. "Convoy 15 Gamma is in a completely different sector." "Same supply chain," Jinho insisted. "The mining equipment delivered to Proxima 7 was supposed to be sent to the factory ships at Vega Prime. Convoy 15 Gamma is carrying the raw materials to complete that delivery cycle." Commander Vextar was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Contact Convoy 15 Gamma immediately. Full alert status." They waited. The bridge was silent except for the soft sounds of computers and breathing from a dozen different species. 17 minutes later, Convoy 15 Gamma reported enemy contact. "Incredible," whispered Science Officer Colvan. Commander Vextar looked at Jinho with something that might have been respect. "Human, it seems your civilian perspective sees things our military training missed." "I just look at the big picture," Jinho said. "In supply chain management, everything connects to everything else. You can't understand one part without seeing the whole system." "Perhaps," Vextar said slowly, "it is time for our military to learn some civilian thinking." The next attack was different. Jinho watched from the bridge as enemy ships released thousands of small drones. These were not the same as before. Each drone seemed to learn and change its behavior during the fight. "Incredible," whispered Science Officer Colvan. "They adapt to our weapons in real time." The coalition ships fired their standard laser cannons. The first few drones were destroyed easily. But then something strange happened. The remaining drones changed their flight patterns. They moved differently, avoiding the laser fire. When the coalition ships switched to plasma weapons, the drones adapted again. "They're learning," said Lieutenant Yuna Choi. "Every time we hit them, the others become harder to hit." Commander Vextar tried every standard military tactic. Formation attacks, flanking maneuvers, concentrated fire. Nothing worked for more than a few minutes. The drones always found a way to counter their moves. "Sir," called the weapons officer. "We've lost 2 escort ships. The drones are learning faster than we can adapt our tactics." Jinho studied the battle through the main viewer. The drones moved like a swarm of angry bees, but there was something else. They were organized. They shared information instantly. When one drone learned something new, all the others knew it immediately. "Commander," Jinho said quietly, "may I suggest something?" Vextar looked frustrated. 3 more ships were reporting heavy damage. "Speak quickly, human. Stop fighting them like enemy soldiers. Fight them like a logistics problem." "What does that mean?" Jinho pointed at the tactical display. "These drones are like a delivery system. They collect information, process it, and share it with the group. But every delivery system has weaknesses. You just need to overload it with bad information. I do not understand. Give them too much data to process. Confuse their learning system. Make them think they're seeing patterns that don't really exist. Commander Vextar's crystal eyes flickered. How? Jinho was already working on his tablet, pulling up ship specifications and cargo manifests. We need to make our ships look like different types of targets. Change their energy signatures, fake their cargo readings, make them broadcast false information. If the drones try to learn from bad data, they'll make bad decisions. That violates standard engagement protocols, said Colonel Tehran, a six-armed officer. Our ships are designed to operate within specific parameters. Your protocols are getting people killed, Jinho replied. These drones don't follow protocols. Why should we? Another explosion rocked the ship. 2 more coalition vessels were critically damaged. Commander, Yuna spoke up, maybe we should try his idea. Traditional tactics aren't working. Vextar was quiet for 10 seconds. Then he turned to his crew. All ships, prepare for unconventional maneuvers. Follow the human's guidance. Jinho felt every eye on the bridge staring at him. He took a deep breath and began giving instructions. First, we need to confuse their target recognition. Have half the ships broadcast civilian identification codes. Make them think we're cargo vessels instead of warships. That's highly irregular, muttered Colonel Tehran. Good, Jinho said. Irregular is what we want. Next, I need 3 ships to pretend they're damaged. Shut down non-essential systems, leak some atmospheric gas, broadcast distress signals. You want us to look weak? Asked the weapons officer. I want the drones to think they've found an easy target. When they move in to finish off the damaged ships, the rest of the fleet hits them from behind. Commander Vextar relayed the orders. Across the fleet, coalition ships began implementing Jinho's unusual strategy. Some ships started broadcasting false cargo manifests. Others dimmed their lights and released harmless gas clouds to simulate damage. The effect was immediate. The drone swarm, which had been moving as one coordinated unit, began to split apart. Some drones moved toward the fake cargo ships. Others went after the ships pretending to be damaged. Their perfect coordination was breaking down. It's working, Yuna said with excitement. They're confused. Now, Jinho said, hit them while they're scattered. The coalition ships opened fire from multiple directions. The drones, no longer working as a unified group, could not adapt fast enough. Within minutes, the entire swarm was destroyed. The bridge erupted in cheers from a dozen different species. Commander Vextar approached Jinho with something that might have been a smile on his alien features. Remarkable, he said. You defeated an adaptive enemy by making them adapt to false information. It's basic supply chain management, Jinho explained. When you have a problem in one part of the system, you don't fix it by adding more of the same. You change how the system works. Over the next several hours, word of the victory spread through the fleet. Officers from other ships requested permission to speak with the human who had outsmarted the learning machines. Admiral Kexthin himself called from the flagship. Coordinator Park, the Admiral's voice came through the bridge speakers. Yes, I'm promoting you to Strategic Coordinator. Your unconventional thinking saved 12 ships and 400 lives today. Sir, I'm not military personnel, Jinho protested. You're now. Emergency Field Commission effective immediately. Lieutenant Choi will help you understand rank structure, but your primary job is to keep thinking like a civilian. We need that perspective. Colonel Tehran stepped forward. Admiral, this human has no formal training in military strategy or space combat. Correct, the Admiral replied. And that is exactly why his strategies work. Our enemy adapts to military thinking. They cannot adapt to thinking that breaks all military rules. After the communication ended, Jinho looked around the bridge. Alien officers who had ignored him yesterday now watched him with curiosity and respect. He was wearing a coalition uniform now, with coordinator rank insignia that Lieutenant Yuna had given him. This feels strange, he admitted to her. Welcome to the military, she laughed. Nothing here makes sense at first. But you're already better at this than officers with 20 years experience. I just solve problems the same way I always have. Look at all the pieces, see how they connect, find the weak points. That's what makes you dangerous to our enemies, Yuna said. They expect us to think like soldiers. They don't expect us to think like humans. Through the window, Jinho could see the remains of the destroyed drone swarm floating in space. Each piece had been a learning machine designed to become smarter with every battle. But they had never encountered someone who would deliberately feed them wrong information. He opened his tablet and began planning new strategies. If the enemy could learn and adapt, then the coalition needed to become unpredictable. They needed to embrace chaos instead of fighting it. Commander Vextar walked over to him. "What are you working on now, Coordinator?" "The next battle," Jinho replied. "Because there will definitely be a next battle. And next time, the enemy will be expecting us to use fake information." "So what will we do?" Jinho smiled. "Something they'll never expect. We'll tell them the truth." The emergency signal came at dawn. Jinho was drinking coffee in the ship's small cafeteria when every screen in the room turned bright red. Admiral Kexthin's face appeared on all displays, his usually calm expression showing deep worry. "All fleet commanders report to emergency stations immediately. Long-range sensors have detected a massive enemy force approaching Coalition Central Command." "This is not a drill." Jinho felt his stomach drop. Coalition Central Command was the main military base for the entire galaxy. Over 50 million people lived and worked there. If it fell, the war would be over. He ran to the bridge where chaos had already begun. Officers from different species were shouting orders in multiple languages. Translation devices were having trouble keeping up with all the rapid conversations. "How many ships?" Commander Vextar was asking. "Over 2,000 enemy vessels," reported the sensor officer. "They're moving in perfect formation. Estimated arrival time, 16 hours. "Impossible," said Colonel Tehran. "Our intelligence showed they had maybe 300 ships total." Lieutenant Yuna looked at Jinho. "Could you have been wrong about their capabilities?" Jinho studied the sensor data on his tablet. The numbers were terrifying, but something about the formation bothered him. "No, this makes sense. They've been testing us. Every attack was a learning exercise. Now they're ready for the real fight." Admiral Kexthin's voice crackled over the communication system. "All fleet units, proceed to Central Command immediately. We will make our stand there." For the next 6 hours, Jinho watched the largest military gathering in galactic history. Ships from 43 different worlds came together around Central Command. The sight was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. But as the coalition forces prepared their defenses, Jinho could see problems everywhere. Each species wanted to fight using their own traditional methods. The Centaurians preferred direct frontal attacks. The Vokari liked hit-and-run tactics. The Zephyrians wanted to wait and defend. "This won't work," he said to Yuna as they watched the battle preparations. "What do you mean?" "Everyone's planning to fight the way they always fight. But this enemy learns from every battle. They've seen all our traditional tactics before. They know exactly what we're going to do." The first enemy ships appeared on long-range sensors 12 hours later. As they got closer, the true size of the attacking force became clear. It was not just 2,000 ships, it was 2,000 ships supported by millions of learning drones. "Dear gods," whispered Science Officer Colvan. "Each drone represents everything they've learned from our previous encounters." In the command center, the coalition's top military leaders were arguing. Admiral Kexthin was trying to coordinate 43 different fleets, each with their own ideas about proper strategy. "We need unified command," insisted General Vorthak, a massive creature with armor-like skin. "My people will not take orders from off-worlders," replied Admiral Zephyra. "Then we will lose," said Admiral Kexthin. "These enemies adapt to everything we do. They learn faster than we can change our tactics." The argument continued for 2 hours. Meanwhile, the enemy fleet moved closer. Jinho watched the tactical displays and felt sick. The coalition had more ships, but they were planning to fight like 43 separate armies instead of one unified force. "This is hopeless," said Commander Vextar. "Every species wants to use their own battle doctrines. We cannot agree on anything." Jinho had been thinking. The enemy fleet was massive, but it was also predictable. They had learned to counter traditional military tactics, but what if the coalition stopped using traditional tactics entirely? "Admiral," he said, approaching the command station. "I have an idea." "Coordinator Park?" Admiral Kexthin looked exhausted. "Unless you can solve centuries of interspecies military rivalry in the next 4 hours, I am not sure any idea will help. What if we don't try to unite the fleets? What if we use their differences as a weapon?" "Explain." Jinho pulled up the fleet positions on the main display. "The enemy has learned to fight organized military forces. They expect us to work together in predictable ways. But what if we do the opposite? What if we make it look like our alliance is falling apart?" The room became quiet. Jinho continued. We stage a fake retreat. Make it look like the different species are abandoning each other. The Centaurians refuse to work with the Vocari. The Zephyrians decide to protect only their own colonies. Let the enemy see exactly what they expect, a fractured alliance. That would leave Central Command defenseless, protested General Vorthak. No, it would look defenseless. While the enemy moves in for an easy victory, our retreating fleets circle around and hit them from every direction at once. They'll be expecting scattered, demoralized forces. Instead, they get the most coordinated attack in galactic history. Admiral Kexthin stared at the display for a long moment. This plan requires perfect timing and communication between 43 different military cultures. One mistake and Central Command falls. Yes, sir. It also requires someone to coordinate all fleet movements in real time. Someone who can make instant decisions without consulting command hierarchy. Someone who thinks completely differently from any military officer. Jinho realized what the Admiral was suggesting. Sir, I can't command the entire coalition fleet. I've been in space for 4 days. You can coordinate, Admiral Kexthin corrected. And right now, coordination is more important than command experience. He turned to face the assembled officers. By emergency authority granted during wartime crisis, I hereby place Strategic Coordinator Jinho Park in charge of all tactical operations. Every fleet commander will follow his directions. The silence was complete. Jinho looked around at alien officers who had spent decades climbing military ranks. Now they would take orders from a human warehouse manager. This is highly irregular, said General Vorthak. These are highly irregular circumstances, the Admiral replied. Coordinator Park, you have supreme tactical command. Don't let us down. Jinho looked at the approaching enemy fleet on the main screen. 2 hours until contact. The fate of galactic civilization was in his hands. He opened his tablet and began writing the most complex logistics plan of his life. The enemy fleet filled the view screen like a dark cloud of metal and death. 2,000 ships moved in perfect formation toward Coalition Central Command. Behind them, millions of adaptive drones waited to learn from whatever the Coalition would throw at them. All fleets begin retreat sequence, Jinho spoke into the communication system. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. Never in his life had he imagined giving orders to experienced military commanders from across the galaxy. On screens around the bridge, he watched as the Coalition fleets began their fake retreat. The Centaurian ships pulled back first, broadcasting angry messages about failed Alliance leadership. The Vocari fleet followed, complaining loudly about incompetent command decisions. Each species played their part perfectly, making their retreat look like real anger and disappointment. The enemy is taking the bait, reported the sensor officer. They're accelerating toward Central Command. Good, Jinho said. Now we wait. Commander Vextar stood beside him, watching the enemy advance. I hope you know what you're doing, Coordinator. If this fails, we lose everything. It will work, Jinho replied, though inside he felt terrified. I've run similar scenarios in supply management. When you want to catch someone stealing from warehouses, you make them think security is weak. Then you surprise them. The enemy fleet reached Central Command's outer defenses exactly on schedule. The automated defense platforms put up resistance, but it was clearly not enough. The attacking ships began their final approach, confident that victory was within reach. All fleets execute Phase 2, Jinho commanded. Around the galaxy, Coalition ships that had been retreating suddenly changed direction. The Centaurian fleet, which had been heading toward their home territory, spun around and approached from the enemy's left flank. The Vocari ships came from above. The Zephyrians attacked from below. But this was not a simple ambush. Jinho had spent hours studying how each species preferred to fight, then assigned them positions that used their natural strengths. The fast Vocari ships hit and ran, keeping the enemy drones busy. The heavily armored Centaurians provided steady firepower. The Zephyrians used their advanced shields to protect damaged vessels. Enemy drones are trying to adapt, called Lieutenant Yuna. But they're receiving conflicting data from 43 different fighting styles simultaneously. Perfect, Jinho said. Keep changing tactics every 2 minutes. Don't let them figure out any single pattern. The battle became a symphony of organized chaos. Just when the enemy drones learned to counter Centaurian direct attacks, the Vocari would switch to their hit-and-run style. When the drones adapted to rapid movement, the Zephyrians would use their slow, defensive approach. It's working, Science Officer Colvan said with amazement. The drones cannot process so many different tactical approaches at once. Their learning algorithms are overloading. But the real surprise came when Jinho activated the final phase of his plan. All cargo ships and civilian vessels begin Phase 3. What? Commander Vextar looked shocked. You're bringing civilians into the battle? Not to fight, Jinho explained. To confuse. Every civilian ship is broadcasting military identification codes and fake weapon signatures. The enemy thinks our fleet just doubled in size. The enemy drones, already struggling to adapt to multiple fighting styles, now faced what appeared to be thousands of additional warships. Their decision-making systems collapsed under the impossible amount of contradictory information. Enemy fleet is breaking formation, reported the tactical officer. Their command ships are trying to retreat, but the drones are not responding to orders. Press the attack, Jinho ordered. All ships, full offensive. The coalition fleet struck with devastating effectiveness. The enemy ships, designed to counter organized military tactics, had no defense against the creative chaos that Jinho had orchestrated. Within 3 hours, the massive invasion force was reduced to scattered debris. Unbelievable, Admiral Kexthin's voice came over the communication system. Coordinator Park, you have achieved the impossible. The enemy fleet is completely destroyed. In the days that followed, representatives from every coalition species came to study what had happened. Military academies across the galaxy began revising their textbooks. The battle was already being called the Chaos Victory, and the day logic failed. You changed everything, Yuna told Jinho as they walked through the ship's corridors. Military thinking will never be the same. I didn't change military thinking, Jinho replied. I just used civilian thinking in a military situation. Admiral Kexthin offered him a permanent position as Fleet Admiral, but Jinho declined. Instead, he accepted a new role that had never existed before, Director of Adaptive Strategy. His job was to teach military officers how to think like civilians when facing unusual problems. Why don't you want to be an admiral? Asked Commander Vextar. Because admirals have to follow military rules, Jinho explained. My value comes from not knowing those rules. The moment I start thinking like a traditional military officer, I become predictable. The coalition established new training programs based on Jinho's methods. Officers from different species began working together in mixed units, learning to combine their natural abilities instead of competing with them. The rigid rank structures that had existed for centuries started becoming more flexible. 6 months later, Jinho stood in his new office at Coalition headquarters, looking out at ships from dozens of worlds working together more efficiently than ever before. His desk was covered with reports from fleet commanders asking for advice on civilian-style problem-solving. Lieutenant Yuna, now promoted to captain, knocked on his door. Director, we have a new situation. Unknown aliens have made contact and they want to join the coalition. But their technology is completely different from anything we've seen. Jinho smiled. Different is good. Different means we'll learn something new. The military leadership is worried. They don't know how to integrate technology that doesn't follow our standard protocols. Then we won't use standard protocols, Jinho said, grabbing his tablet. We'll create new ones. As they walked toward the briefing room, Jinho reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best leaders were not the ones with the most training, but the ones willing to think differently. The coalition was stronger now because it embraced human unpredictability alongside alien expertise. The war against the adaptive machines was over, but Jinho's real work was just beginning. He had shown the galaxy that rigid thinking could be defeated by creative chaos. Now he would help build a new kind of military, one that could adapt to anything the universe might throw at them. The stars outside his window seemed brighter somehow, full of infinite possibilities that could only be reached by those brave enough to think beyond the rules.